Sierra, is professionalism as we know it dead?
The short answer is yes, but to give you a little more context, I think in the last few years, there have been some major shifts in the world, including COVID and a lot of different technological enhancements. So when I say yes, it is because as the world is shifting, so do these little things such as professionalism. For example, you're not seeing people come into the office with business professional attire anymore. You're not seeing those small talk conversations happening by the water cooler because in some cases there are no water coolers anymore since everyone's virtual. For example, when people are working virtual, they're wearing hoodies and sweatpants, which everyone loves now. So I think in the professional traditional sense of, I think that aspect has been slowly dying off.
That's an interesting way to start to look at it here. Is this a good thing? Is this evolution of professionalism a good thing?
I think it honestly depends who you are when you ask that. I think if you've been in the workforce for 20 to 30 years and this is exactly what you're used to, maybe not if you're not used to change and if you're not willing to adapt. But I think for most people, either entering the job force or looking for something that's a little bit more flexible with their day to day life, then yes, I think a lot of people do see it as a positive.
Makes sense, right? Some people embrace change, some people resist, and we're going to talk a little bit about the resistance of that. Let's take a quick step back. You're a learning and development manager and a coaching specialist.
Yes.
How are you defining professionalism? Let's do this traditional sense, and then as our current evolution is right now.
Yeah, and it's good to take those two comparisons because I do see a difference. I think if you were to ask what is professionalism a few years ago, you would just really get that basic demonstration of competence, responsibility, someone that shows up professionally in their dress attire, their attitude, how they're speaking, even how well their handshake is. But I think now that in terms of professionalism, it's a lot more focused on, do you have a work ethic? Can you get the job done? Are you someone that a manager can trust and rely on? It's a lot less on those typical norms that you would see in terms of the visual side of it a
That
few
makes
decades
sense.
ago.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think if we can even bracket it almost, old school style professionalism, perfectionism, there's dress attire, showing up early, staying late, working as many hours as needed in hopes of being promoted. And then one of the other pieces too on that was kind of pocketing emotions. When I was doing research for our discussion previously before COVID, people didn't mention how they felt. Right? There wasn't a lot of discussion in terms of even mental health or emotional intelligence. And if you ever kind of shattered through that, it was almost seen as unprofessional. Whereas in what you're saying today is professionalism is almost fully emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the focus on mental health in the workforce and even just speaking about emotion or anything like that has changed a lot in the past few years because people do see it as important. And if you are looking to get the best out of an employee, you do need to be in touch with emotional intelligence really more than ever. You want to get out the best possible result from your employees. So without knowing that, it can kind of be hard sometimes.
Okay, cool. So wanted to bring up a article actually that I just read, and this was something from Squarespace, their CMO, Kinjal Mathur. So she mentioned in an interview, she said, you have to just be willing to do anything, any hours, any pay, any type of job, just remain open. She is saying that she would work for free, that she was willing to work evenings and weekends. Is that a mentality that is no longer really appreciated, accepted, needed? Is that an old school form of professionalism? And then now today, I'm coming in, let's say 9 to 5. I'm doing my best wherever I can throughout the course of the day. Maybe I have flex scheduling, even better. And that is enough? Or are we saying professionalism requires what she is asking?
Yeah, I think it has definitely shifted. I mean, as that article's coming out, I read an article a few weeks ago saying that in the financial industry, that's typically how internships are viewed is you're working right in the morning up until late at night. You're probably barely getting paid and you just kind of have to do whatever there is to do. There are now being restrictions put on interns actually working outside of those hours, with us bringing in the mental health aspect. That's a big aspect that companies are looking at and making sure that employees are not overworking themselves and burning themselves out. I think if you look at professionalism decades ago, yes, burning yourself out was seen as a good thing. It was something that, okay, this person is willing to work no matter what the hours are, but is that the most healthy way? And I think that that has come a lot into the conversation. So with that being said, I think more so now the work style is you're getting your work done as long as you're really succeeding in what you're doing. If you're able to do that in a 9 to 4 even time frame, managers just want things done ideally. So as long as you're able to manage that, I think that it's not even seen as not professional because managers are just looking at the output.
And Sierra, this change in the way professionalism is looked at or driven was certainly accelerated by COVID, right? I'm sure it's being accelerated by technology. But the catalyst of this, I guess, change of view in terms of professionalism and even work ethic, is that driven by these younger generations, either Gen Z, 23% of the workforce, or the generation that may come on after them? Is that who's driving this?
I think so, because if you look at it, these are the individuals that are growing up and looking at the current form of work or what it was a few years ago or decades ago and are saying, I don't want to work like that. I don't want my whole life just to be my job. I want to do a job and I want to do it well, but I want to be able to integrate that into my daily life. I want to be able to do the laundry while I'm working because I'll still get it done and then I don't have to do that on the weekend. And I can use that time to kind of unwind and be ready and refreshed for the week. So I think that that is definitely a driving factor of why the workplace is shifting. And personally, I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I'm right behind you. In terms of somebody who worked pre COVID and after, I'm enjoying these shifts. And even my mindset is shifting based off of hearing all these, and people are producing during that time. I want to stick on the generation topic just for a second, and then we'll talk about more management coaching, or what they need, I should say. A quick survey that came on up. This was from 2022, so a little outdated, but still post COVID. NACE survey found that 86.9% of employers say that professionalism is very or extremely important. I think we can agree with that. There's a lot of pros and cons, and I'll ask you about what are the benefits of this in a second. But while on the generation topic, that same survey says only 44.2% of new college graduates are very or extremely professional. You're a coach in the space. Why is that the case, that the perception is there? And then also, are you seeing that there's universities and colleges training on professionalism, or folks just have to wing it and find out themselves?
Yeah, I think a big thing is colleges aren't training on those areas. So that is where that lack is coming because they're being trained on areas, if you're going into the business field, on biology, but not anything necessarily of how to act in a corporate environment that they definitely most likely will be entering. So I think it's pretty interesting on the focuses of the courses sometimes, but as a coach, I've definitely seen that with early career individuals. Companies do want to focus on enhancing those skills and they realize, okay, we do have to train them on professionalism once they get here because it's not something that is being covered. In terms of professionalism, really what I mean in this sense of what is not being covered is how to send professional emails, how to take initiative and what's expected when you're thinking of how to work under ambiguity or how to adapt. Those are definitely areas that I've seen managers wanting to enhance the skills of early career individuals.
What are your thoughts on, and I really like that, how are they being prepared for ambiguous direction? They're not, right? People, anybody who's had some type of business professionalism training in school It wasn't multiple courses. If you told me somebody had 2 courses on it throughout their 4 years, it would probably be the first time I heard that. How they say the stat is 44.2% of new college graduates have professionalism. The rest don't. How are managers just expecting this to occur? Are they also setting up trainings for them when they come out of school? Is that what is part of, say, internship programs? Is that what's part of junior talent development? Is that what you're incorporating, for instance, even in your own world?
Yeah, that's something that I've definitely incorporated. I don't think traditionally, though, it is incorporated. I think they are taking these early career individuals, getting them in the door, and then realizing, wait, they don't have all these skills. Let's backtrack and then train them. But I think hopefully as time goes on and they see, okay, this is something we constantly do have to train, hopefully it does start naturally getting incorporated in these types of programs for that talent.
Isn't it kind of funny that these trainings are only occurring, or at least the majority of them are occurring, for junior talent or entry-level talent? I don't know about you, but I have seen experienced managers, people who are very tenured, demonstrate the least amount of professionalism, right? Not showing up to meetings. Maybe they're late. They're saying they're going to be somewhere they don't. They don't provide information. You have to send them 20 different follow-up emails. Why are trainings for experienced individuals not as prevalent? What do you think?
I think once you get to a certain level, people just start giving passes out to those people
Yeah.
because they've gotten to that level, they have that experience, and they're coming with knowledge that sometimes they feel that, hey, I don't have to worry about the small formalities anymore. I mean, I've seen so many times in different articles that you know how high someone is in the company based off of how short their email is because
Yeah.
they don't say hi anymore. They don't say, they don't sign off on it or anything like that. So I think that that's just something that has become a norm of those higher positions, since you have so much knowledge and credibility that you don't really need those areas. But then again, if you're interacting with someone coming into the company, what's that teaching them? So I do think it has to be improved across the board.
And I love that last part too. It's what's teaching them. We have this gap that's occurring right here through our discussion that we're seeing. Junior talent, new generations are not getting trainings. The hiring managers or managers in general are seeing that they don't have the professionalism levels that they are asking. However, more experienced people, what they're doing by leading by example is not necessarily professionalism. So then where are the younger generations into the industry supposed to learn it? And then we're talking about maybe not having a structured learning and development team for a lot of folks who teach professionalism. It's going to be a challenge. We're going
Yeah.
to talk about probably AI even causing more of a gap when not utilized correctly. Wanted to stick on that manager piece though. Managers, executives, whoever it may be, they need it just as equally. I think when you're living through 2020, the people who probably did best were those who were familiar with technologies and were able to adjust to maybe Zoom, right?
Right.
Is that what you see as well as we're talking about this acceleration of professionalism? The one who maybe did best were something called digital natives, I think is a term that is familiar in the coaching world.
Yeah, and just for all the listeners who aren't familiar with what a digital native is, someone that is categorized as a digital native is someone who's able to easily adapt to technologies. They're not really afraid of new technologies. And if they're approached with one and having to incorporate it in their day to day, they're easily able to do it. They jump right on it because they're used to it. I think with growing up with technology, that kind of helps a little bit. But you're seeing people that didn't grow up with technology that are also digital natives. So I think it just depends on your adaptability there. I think it really just depends on people's mindset going into these types of situations and how adaptable are you willing to be. With some managers, I see managers who are very adaptable, are willing to kind of instill that mentality into their talent. Then on the flip side, you have managers that are like, this is the way we've always done it, so we're not facing any types of changes. If you're incorporating technology, those are the people who will eventually get left behind because adapting in this workforce is necessary.
I think those are all good points. And if you happen to be a manager listening, it's not a bad thing to get training on this. right? It's not a bad thing to run trainings for your teams as well. I mean, when you look at the benefits of professionalism, and I'll share the articles on the screen as we're talking here, those who have professionalism, their engagement is increased. They are seeking out to improve their performance. They are consistently performing well, and they take higher initiative. As a manager of a handful of folks, that is something I would love all of them to have. Why wouldn't we incorporate that type of professionalism? Just to confirm, how often are you seeing, in relation to, say, junior talent, are you seeing the executive talent being trained on professionalism? Is it nearly zero?
Yeah, I mean, I've never really seen that executive level trained on it. It's only leadership trainings, which are great, but never professionalism. I think that it's just such a stereotype in the industry of that's only needed for early career individuals who are entering the workforce and have never been trained on it before. So yeah, it is pretty shocking to see those stats because I mean, personally, in my career with working with a bunch of different companies, I've never seen that occur.
And you know what's funny is we're getting this quote from before from a C-level individual to tell people to work for free,
Right.
right? There needs to be that professionalism in asking that alone. Who knows who can handle that? Who has that support system to work for free?
Right.
So let's do a little shift here. AI is, I'm sure, playing a big impact on the coaching world. Can you share with me how is that changing your approach? How are you utilizing AI for coaching or training?
I think AI has really helped in a lot of different ways. I see AI in the coaching area as really being your personal assistant. You can ask it so many different things and you can utilize it by asking it to have certain tones. Or if you're looking to become a CEO, coach me as your Steve Jobs. You know, you can really customize it to what works best for you and you can get a lot of knowledge if you're able to use it accurately. I think another good thing for AI and with coaching is not just coaching in general for your role, but even certain scenarios as a manager. You can ask it, hey, I'm dealing with these issues with my teammates. Teammate one has this personality, teammate two has this personality. And I'm not saying for managers to use this as their be all end all, but if you've ever come to a spot where you're a manager and you don't have any peers at your level, this is a great tool to use so you can get a second opinion on how to approach these situations.
That's great. And that's one of my favorite things. So you're saying that you can actually kind of create simulated responses, simulated meetings almost with individuals on your team. You kind of set a persona based up in the model and then can role play with them.
Yeah, exactly that. It sounds crazy if you've never done it before and if you're new to the concept, but it is extremely helpful because you may want to approach something a certain way and then you put that personality in a chat GPT, for example, and you'll get that response and you may think, okay, I did not think it would go that way. Let me rephrase or reframe how I'm approaching this situation. So yeah, I think it's definitely a really cool feature if you're able to use it accurately.
Talk about self-reflection through that too. How would you do this scenario when dealing with this person's mood this way or that way? I mean, that is truly invaluable. And there is, and I forget the term it is, but when someone's trained in a one-on-one environment, there is a very high multiplier of digestion or being able to take what they learned and implement it right away, and understanding the comprehension is very high. Unfortunately, we don't all have the ability to have somebody like Sierra be their individual coaching specialist or their manager there. And so using a large language model like a ChatGPT could be that mentor for self-reflection and testing things out and maybe accelerate, right? Almost like a tutor, would you say?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can use it even just outside of coaching if you want to think of tutoring in the traditional sense. I mean, you could learn anything from a chat GPT or any large language model out there, but it is extremely helpful when you don't have those resources because most companies don't have those resources or someone in the department that you can go to ask advice for of how to handle a certain situation. So I think it's great when companies do invest in having that, but if you don't, you know, we have the technology to fall back on for it.
Our first episode of Codex that we had, we talked about AGI, and
Mhm.
it seems like it's going to be years away, depending on who you ask, or not at all. And that could take people's jobs. Gen AI is already shifting our work, day-to-day work, right? And I'll give you some quick stats to put this in perspective. CNN, 61% of large US firms plan to use AI to automate tasks in the next year. McKinsey, two big stats here. 15% of global workforce, or 400 million workers, will lose their job to AI by 2030. And then this one I thought was interesting. The adoption of Gen AI. Just last year it was 55%. Now we're looking at 72% of people are using Gen AI in some form or fashion. Gen AI, by the way, is the ChatGPTs, Geminis, Anthropic Claude, that type of thing. And the reason why I want to bring it up on a discussion about professionalism is because with AI in place, you could still stand out by being professional. AI is not going to take that away from you. Can you dive a little bit more into that thought process, Sierra?
Yeah, I think it's something that, technology can give you all the answers, but they're not helping your mannerisms and your emotional intelligence to the extent that, people are, of course, saying that these technologies are eventually going to be able to give you some emotional intelligence, but it isn't helping to that extent. It may give you the answers, but not exactly how to execute them face to face. So I think that that's a big area that, you do have to rely on your professionalism for when in those situations.
Yeah, because that's what's going to help you stand on out, right? Overall, if Gen AI or AI is knocking out your manual or repetitive tasks, the beautiful parts of humans, right, is us, of who we are. And that professionalism that we bring along is going to be why somebody is accelerating, hopefully, within a job or getting hired or whatever it may be. That will be that difference maker if other things are all equal in terms of the ability to use Gen AI. However, this is more of a coaching question to you. I was listening to Lex Friedman, and he had a guest on, and they were talking about this term called ikigai. It's a Japanese term, and it's basically kind of self-worth, right? The feeling of self-worth. And Lex and his guest were talking about how there is an I risk, an ikigai risk, that as AI ends up taking more and more of our responsibilities, we may start having less self-worth. Now, to kind of bring that down a little bit, big reason is because when you ask, hey, tell me about yourself, one of the first things people talk about is their job. And so if AI is taking pieces of your job, you're almost like, okay, well, how else do I talk about myself, right? Or what value do I bring? You and I were discussing this in the past, Sierra, where you've been working on a little bit of coaching to kind of overcome this feeling of maybe a decrease in self-worth because of AI taking the responsibilities of the day-to-day task. How are you going about that right now? And what levels are you seeing that concern from most? Junior, mid, experience, etc.?
I think it really depends on the person. I don't even think it's a certain level per se, because you have individuals that don't know anything about Gen AI, and then you have people that know all about Gen AI. So I think that's where I'm seeing it, is the people who are reading the news and seeing these stats. Those are the individuals that are like, okay, now I'm getting a little scared by this. The biggest recommendation that I have when I am coaching these individuals is become a subject matter expert in a certain area. Yes, technology can give you a lot of assistance and a lot of help, but when that does connect from getting information and then actually executing it, that's where the person comes into it. You need that, human touch on a lot of these processes still. So I think a big area that I recommend is look at your tasks, see what technology is not doing, and then try to specialize in that area so you know that your job is safe for as long as possible. No one knows what technology can do in 20 years from now. Robots may be running the world by then. But until then, I would just say look at what technology can't do and try to start specializing in those areas of your role.
Excellent. And where that leads is more so on that personality traits, correct?
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's something that's where the professionalism comes back to, is if you have those personality traits of having a strong work ethic and going above and beyond, and you have that mindset of running through a wall to get an answer, those are going to be the difference makers.
Excellent. Excellent. Sierra, as a professional, and someone who's very professional overall, what advice would you give people listening to build their own personal brand? Now, when someone looks at them, they say, you know what, that individual's professional.
Something that I really like to coach about is if you are looking to improve your brand and maybe you don't know how, or you don't even know what aspects of your brand you want to increase or improve, professionalism is the area to focus on. Because if you're average at your job, but you have that professionalism, that now makes you above average. I recommend going and watching TED Talks. They're one of my favorite things and one of my biggest recommendations in coaching, because those are people that have confidence, have professionalism, are subject matter experts, and really exude that confidence. So watching TED Talks, trying to pick up those mannerisms. But if you also have someone that you see as a role model and that you want to emulate, ask that person. See what if you can sit down with them and ask them how they've gotten to that level. If you can't sit down with them, ask ChatGPT to act like that person, and ask them and do a little role play with ChatGPT of, if I were this person, what advice could I get? With how accurate that may be, depending on who you're trying to emulate, is up for debate, but it will give you as accurate information as is out there in the universe.
This is excellent. And I appreciate that. Kind of the actionable items that people could take away from here. I guess probably my last couple questions for you. Professionalism. After our 30 minutes or so of chatting about it here today, is it decreased or is it just evolved? Is it just different? And there needs to be some type of compromise between the thought processes. Where do we stand at this moment if you had to put kind of a feather in the cap of the discussion?
I think it's definitely evolved. I think it's something that it does have to bend a little bit on both ends of, there can't be no professionalism in that typical sense. You still want to show up to those meetings professionally dressed as much as the company requires to. But I also think it's something where there are focus shifts on what exactly is important. If you don't have a blazer on during a team meeting that's virtual, but you're getting the work done, does it really matter as much? As long as that work is getting done, if I can trust you as an employee, if you have that strong work ethic, if you're approaching things in the most professional manner when you're speaking to people, that gets the job done. So I think it's just a big shift. I think it's something where it's good to look at the research of how technology is changing the world and the workplace, so you're up to date on learning where everything is shifting so you don't get left behind.
Very cool. Professionalism is not going to go out of style. It's just going to evolve and has evolved, right? And there's some of those core factors that are just always going to stick. My last question to you. Do people truly want to ditch that traditional professionalism, kind of established norms? And do we all really want to go towards where maybe some of the other generations are driving it? Secretly, do we all want to go there?
I really think so. And I've seen this throughout all levels. I've seen people who have been in the industry for 30 to 40 years saying, I like the hybrid workspace. I like not having to wear a suit every day anymore. I like just being able to being trusted to do my work. And once it's done, I can take an hour off because I have other obligations that day. So I have seen it really across the board that everyone is looking to make that shift into the more, I guess, modern way that we're describing professionalism.
Yeah. People just want to be their authentic selves and do what's best for themselves to produce the most. I just can't blame them for that. Sierra, any last words as we wrap on up here?
I think we covered a lot, honestly. I'm excited that we were able to get a chance to talk about this today. And I think it's really good to share the information on what I've seen from multiple different companies about how professionalism, the traditional sense, is dying, but it's still there and it's just evolving, as is everything else.
Awesome. Invaluable discussion. We always appreciate your inputs. Thank you so much, Sierra. I'm Rich Bowers. Take care, everybody.